Hello and welcome to our third and final day of HUD's Office of Housing Counseling 2023 Community Conference. You have joined us for Powerful Partnerships, OHC, and HUD's Office of Field Policy and Management. As with the other sessions, folks are joined in listen-only mode. So if you have any technical issues, please do put those in the chat box, and our host, Kate, can help you sort those out. And then if you have any content questions, feel free to put those in the Q&A. We may or may not have time to answer them live today, but we still want to hear what you want to know. So feel free to throw those in there, and we'll have those either way. Our speakers today are David Berenbaum, Deputy Assistant Secretary for HUD's Office of Housing Counseling, and Michelle Perez, the Deputy Assistant Secretary for HUD's Office of Field Policy and Management. And today they're just going to have a discussion about OHC and FPM and their relationship. So with that, I'll just hand it over to David to take us on our way.
Thank you so much, Claire, and hello, everyone. Yesterday I said our work is about people and places, and nothing celebrates the impact of our work together than, in fact, our work with all of HUD's field offices. I'd like to invite Michelle Perez to join me on camera. The work that we do with our field offices really demonstrates our commitment as a federal agency to every community in the nation. I just want to switch gears for a moment before I formally introduce Michelle and we have our conversation, to acknowledge the very important work that is going on right now in Hawaii. In fact, I want to recognize a number of agencies, the Hawaii Homeownership Center, the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, the Haley Mahalu Homeownership and Housing Counseling Program, the Nanakuli Housing Corporation, Habitat for Humanity in Maui, Neighborhood Assistance Corporation of America, their Hawaii branch, the Hawaiian Lending and Investment folks, and the Money Management International Porchlight Initiative. I also want to celebrate the work of the Hawaiian Community Assets and the Legal Aid Society of Hawaii. All of these groups are approved HUD counseling organizations, and together they have provided HUD-approved housing counseling, but more significantly, disaster relief services to over 1,000 families impacted by the fire in Hawaii right now. Please join me in expressing our sincere appreciation for their good works. And in fact, several of the agencies are actually attending our virtual conference. Thank you to each of the counselors who are here with us today, and we're going to do everything we can to support the recovery efforts in Hawaii. So I trust that many of you know Michelle Perez already. She is the Deputy Assistant Secretary for HUD's Office of Field Policy and Management. In our world of acronyms, FPM, Michelle started in February of 2021, and she was appointed to her position. But in her role, she really oversees a critical aspect of all of our work at HUD. And it demonstrates how we deliver on our mission and commitment to create strong, sustainable, and inclusive communities. And it's been a joy for me personally to work with Michelle. She is a strong advocate for the Office of Housing Counseling and all that you do each day in the field. And I'm really just delighted that we're kicking off things today together on the third day of our conference. So Michelle, please, why don't you introduce yourself? It's a friendly audience, and let's have some fun in this discussion.
No, I thank you, David. And hello, everybody. I am very glad to be here. There's no other place I'd rather be right now than to have this conversation with you, not just with the Office of Housing Counseling, but with every single one of the participants who are on the line. Your role, your value, how much we appreciate you and celebrate you as part of the HUD family is very meaningful, is very intentional and purposeful. One of the things that I think is so compatible in terms of what you do and what we do in the Office of Field Policy and Management is there are no preconditions of the degree to which someone walks through the door and asks for help. In the same way that the Office of Housing Counseling helps all people who are seeking assistance, so too does FPM. In many cases, there are very singular paths of how you find HUD, and what you're eligible for and what you qualify for, and does your county or your city, are they an entitlement, and does that pass-through funding apply to you, right? There are lots of circuitous paths to find help at HUD, and it's incumbent for you to know where you want to go and who you need to talk to get it. And the beauty with, I think, and what we have in common that makes, I think, our offices so very special is that there is no precondition. We are here to serve anyone and everyone who walks through the door in trying to understand what they're challenged by, what their personal circumstances are, and how we can navigate them through the tools and the resources, access, information, to get them to the place that they choose to be. And the people with whom we work, the community members, they have to know that we are here waiting and willing, and we have to be just as intentional about pushing into community so that they have knowledge that we exist, that we have knowledge that we are here to help. It's simply not enough for your teams or mine to simply sit in an office and wait for someone to walk through the door. I think that is why what you just said, David, about what's happening in Maui right now, we go to the place where we are most needed in the moment of crisis. Disaster, whether it's a man-made crisis, whether it's a natural disaster, whether it's a global pandemic, right? There are impacts to the communities that we serve that we can anticipate based on our knowledge of this work and our engagement with community about how we need to show up, how we need to be intentional, how we need to be respectful, how we need to meet folks where they are on their journeys, but also be compassionate and treat them with the dignity and respect that they deserve. And I think that is something that is embedded deep in the work that you do in community, and also in what we are growing and training to, right? It's not a soft skill set. It's actually a very technical skill set that we need to all of us together grow in our ability to be able to manage that, to be able to empower others, and to be able to deliver the mission of this agency that we are all committed to execute. HUD's Office of Field Policy Management. My hope is you actually don't even need to know who I am. I'd much rather you know who all of our regional administrators are, who all of our deputy regional administrators are, and who all of our field office directors are. And in this case, in the example you named, David, Ryan Okahara as the field office director in Hawaii, and Jason Poo, who's the regional administrator. I do celebrate them as well in their efforts to coordinate with all of the other critical players on the ground to deliver care quickly and in a way in which is responsive to community needs. FPM has 64 field offices across the country. They include 10 regional offices and 54 field offices, and every single one of them is overseen by either a field office director, a deputy regional administrator who covers a region, as well as a regional administrator who is a political appointee. The relationships you have, not just with the leaders of those offices, but also with the staff that work within those organizations, I think is the critical nexus between how we can ensure that HUD is well represented to advance homeownership and to create greater opportunities for assistance across the country. I have this incredible privilege of drafting, and when I say draft, I really mean compiling the agency's equity plan. There was the first executive order that was issued on the first day of the administration, and specifically a presidential memorandum that called HUD specifically to acknowledge and redress historical harm with respect to segregation, racist, and discriminatory practices and policies that for many of us are still facing today. the impacts of what happened have a direct correlation to the need for our work to be present. And in this way, I want to say that the Office of Housing Counseling, the work of each and every single one of you, is uplifted in that equity plan, because what you are doing are leading to outcomes and impacts. FPM is intentional about serving people and partners and expanding possibilities across programs and sectors, informed through collaboration with local community to advance HUD's mission.
Wow.
Which means if our leadership teams don't know who to engage with and where you are and the challenges that you're experiencing, then we're not in a position to be able to deliver and execute. And I think having that alignment is key. And for what it's worth, to better facilitate that, we've created a QR code in case you don't know who your field office director is or where they're located and you don't have a relationship. I encourage you to go on to what we like to call HUD Help, a QR code that in general was created to introduce folks to the whole span of HUD's programs. But if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of this QR code, you will see the email address, the phone number of every single field office in the country, so that we can be sure that we're tied together in executing this work, because we can amplify, we can support, and so many of you have been just such critical partners to us and with us in specifically the secretary's priorities around the house parties that we've done nationally. There've already been 15 of them in our events that happen throughout the fiscal year, and most especially during Homeownership Month. We've hosted over 70 events in partnership with each of you across the country to ensure that people understand how to access information. So I say all that to say, this partnership and the framing of this conversation between you and I, David, is important to me personally, because as a individual who got my first home with an FHA loan, who went through the counseling process, and whose family came as immigrants and were able to take advantage of a foreclosed HUD home, an opportunity that we got through a bidding process that we never would have gotten, and using our own sweat equity to make it the home that I look back fondly upon my own personal childhood memories. I know what it means. I've been personally impacted, and I'm grateful and thankful that there are organizations such as yours across the country who are equally as committed to do this work.
Michelle, wow. Thank you first for sharing that with all of us. And, I remember, I'm going to date myself a little bit. And of course, fair housing and equal housing opportunity are in all of our genes. And it's a core mission, not only of HUD and each of our offices, but of course, everyone in the housing counseling community. But I remember when I first started as a partner of HUD, and I won't say how long ago that was, at a FIP, a Fair Housing Initiatives Program agency that also was providing housing counseling to everyone out there. One of my first meetings and one of my first resources was our HUD regional office in New York. And I found the team, and I find this through today, that all of the staff at every level in all of the regional and field offices are so accessible and really invested in the success of all of our partners' efforts, whether it be fair housing or community development or multifamily and single family or housing counseling in all the areas that we work in. Now, you and I regularly work together on issues of housing equity, on issues of course, also realizing home ownership and so many other significant issues that HUD prioritizes. But I think it would be really helpful for folks in the housing counseling community to get a good understanding from your perception on how we work together and how that connects with them. A perfect example, of course, was what we're doing, right, to make home the goal, our campaign and how it connects with the house parties. But there's so much more. Could you share some other examples?
Oh, easily. I think the first one that is not necessarily as apparent to folks, I think, is the fact that FPM serves as HUD's front door, right? I said before, there are lots of program offices, and understanding how to route to the right place is a challenging thing to do for anyone to do. And people call HUD, right? There's the FHA Resource Center. Folks know to call perhaps the FHEO hotline if they want to file a discrimination complaint. But if there are other other inquiries that people are calling about and doesn't quite fit in those two boxes, the question remains then, who do they call? Particularly when they want to call the US government to get the assistance to which they're entitled, at a minimum, the information so that they can make the right decisions for themselves and their families. What is not commonly known is that HUD's field offices, we collect nearly 120,000 calls a year from people who we meet on the street, in neighborhood, in community events, at outreach engagements, people who are industrious enough to know how to find an office, and they walk in, they make the efforts to come into the office, or they send us an email. We respond to 125,000 calls, and I think it's important for your partners to know that a significant number of these calls relate to home ownership assistance. In FY22, we got nearly 20,000 calls. In FY23, year to date, we're at about 15,000, and our high season is August and September, so we expect a significant jump. And when we receive these calls, knowing who you are matters to us, because at the end of the day, we want to refer them to the experts. We want to refer them to individuals who are working in these same communities, who can walk these folks through the help that they need to get where they want to be. We've also gotten, I'll use another metric, rental assistance. We get a whole host of calls of people just calling for help for rental assistance. And I know that your teams also support that work as well. In FY22, we got about 29,000 calls for rental assistance. In FY23, we're near at 35,000. So the point here is having the relationship with the HUD field office, because we can disaggregate this information. We can share this information. Where are we seeing spikes across the country? Where are we seeing significant pockets of where folks need information? Where are we seeing folks who are at risk of foreclosure and aren't maybe necessarily opening up the mail and reading the guidance, and they just want to call HUD? This is a place where I think is important. And the third number I'll share with you, not necessarily is directly related, but if we're talking about the continuum of support that we offer, I would share with you that in FY23, we got over 4,000 direct requests for homelessness assistance. So either people who were in fact experiencing homelessness or were at risk of becoming homeless. And that was nearly a 12% increase over last fiscal year. And for what it's worth, our fiscal year has not yet ended until, the next couple of weeks. So this to give you a sense of, we have information that we want to share with you, because that pass through, that warm handoff of whether it's a person who walks in, a call or an email, having the relationship to say, we can refer you to the right place to get you some help, is what we want to continue to do. And I think having that connection, especially if you need to refer back to HUD, is helpful. That's the first one.
Yes, Michelle, that's terrific. If I could jump in,
Please.
I'm very interested in learning more about your findings and assistance that you're providing to homeless populations. Our next Housing Council Federal Advisory Committee, which will be virtual on the 28th of this month, is going to be focusing in on homeless issues, prevention, rehousing, and expanding the safety net so that housing counseling agencies can really leverage the work they're doing with other providers, such as in continuum of care. So that data that you've just shared is fascinating. I'd love to share with our advisory committee.
Absolutely.
As well, we have just completed informally released yesterday at our session looking at landlord tenant and future issues, eviction prevention in the marketplace, a survey of what our agencies are seeing and what their needs are to expand services moving forward. And I'm going to share that report with you. It was a very compelling presentation during our conference yesterday. One area that I want to express my appreciation to you, of course, we have held two regional events, place-based events, the first in Chicago, the second in the San Francisco Bay Area. First, I want to thank you and your staff. What a marvelous collaboration. Everyone who attended those programs really felt as if they were coming home and had a very productive day, talking about local issues, national priorities, raising questions to us as an agency. It was win-win. And of course, we're planning 6 more that are coming up. And I'm just going to repeat for the benefit of the folks, I said it yesterday again, but we're looking at Houston and Seattle and New York City and Columbus, Ohio, and Boston, and perhaps 1 or 2 other sites that we're thinking about. So much opportunity. And, when we come to you for a regional event, talking about the housing counseling program, how do you see the opportunities for really focusing in on regional needs? How should we approach it with you?
So I think it's useful to think of the HUD's field office, that we have a delegated authority through the secretary to oversee HUD's operational responsibilities in the field. Truth is, we don't have programs where we have funding. We don't oversee or have monitoring or compliance. The role of the FPM office is to, based on a particular community, and it's organized by states and regions, so we do use those boundaries, but we really look at the intersection of all of HUD's programs as they occur in that particular community. And so we look at it from a customer orientation, not internal to HUD, how our programs are siloed and organized. Truth be told, I saw a question in the chat, where's there money for rental assistance? There's money for rental assistance in our Office of Community Planning and Development, the Office of Public Housing, right? The office, there are so many different places in Office of Multifamily Housing. There are so many different places where rental assistance can present itself that the average user doesn't know, and maybe even doesn't need to know, how it's organized or routed into government. And so that is how we add that value with your teams, with your partners, is because we can help lay out, right, what are the issues and the concerns that your teams are identifying. And because of our in-depth knowledge of how and where, who are our grantees, where are the multifamily assisted properties, what is the current wait list looking like with the housing authority, these are things that we have knowledge of, because it is my expectation that each of our field office director have a community lens, an orientation, a landscape analysis of what's going on specifically around HUD assets, but also within the larger housing and community development landscape. So with that respect, here's where I tell you, we can add very specific and intentional value on the work that you do. We interact with governors and mayors and local elected officials. We interact with the media. We have a public affairs component embedded across our regional offices. We work closely with advocates and allies, tenant organizations, community groups, and we are expanding our work with philanthropy, another place where I believe that where we leverage, where are all the funding opportunities, what are the things that the government can provide, and what are the things that the private sector can provide, especially when we're talking about landlord outreach, when we're talking about finding new ways of expanding housing supply, given the incredible calls on demand. So in that sense, I think having your field office partner to give a sense to your communities what we think we know, I say that, right, based on the information that we've collected, based on our knowledge of our HUD program offices. But I would also say we are equally dependent on your housing counseling partners to tell us what you know, because what information is not actually crossing through or is not breaking through in the way that it needs to? What concerns are being raised? What challenges are they experiencing for which we can, if not necessarily help find a solution, but find others, right? Because in the end, it involves all of us who can complement that solution, who can add value to finding new ways of doing business. That is where I think that that it's a sweet spot where FPM leadership lies, because we are of community, we are for community, but we are also representatives of the agency on the ground. And so that back and forth is absolutely critical.
And those partnerships are a golden opportunity. For example, at the regional meetings, we also have the FDIC inviting regional banks to explore fee-for-service contracts with our housing counseling organizations so that we can realize our goal of bridging the homeownership gap and leverage more support for housing counseling from the private sector as well. I mean, thinking ahead, I'm looking forward to conversations with you and our colleagues at HUD to really leverage the housing choice voucher program to move people from rental tenancy to home ownership. And that's a new initiative that we internally are working on at HUD as well.
Can I share with you one more on that? You mentioned FDIC. I was just at a White House convening yesterday where the Department of Transportation and EPA, the Department of Energy, right? These are partners to HUD and the federal interagency family, but with the bill, what is bipartisan infrastructure law, as well as IRA, we're seeing those agencies getting billions of dollars and a very short time frame with which to spend it. And the most fascinating thing was they were hungry to learn more about HUD because they want to align the way in which the Department of Transportation, as an example, what does transit-oriented development look like? If they're thinking about bridges and roads and streets and investing in local communities, and as part of the Biden-Harris administration's Justice 40 initiative, where the community benefit 40% of federal funding must be received and executed by the community, they want to find linkages and partners that they don't currently have. And they were truly excited about the opportunity to leverage how they could braid their funding with HUD to do exactly that, to build.
That's great. And that also connects with HUD's priority of affirmatively furthering fair housing on a community level, because all of these things are connected in a fair housing plan. We're running out of time. I just want to invite Claire. Claire, are there any questions? We just have a few minutes left, but are there any questions in the chat box that we should perhaps try to take a stab at?
Sure, we do have some questions coming in. So we've got a question. One person would like clarification. Does HUD FPM provide oversight to HUD programs like public housing, continuum of care?
No, not oversight. So in the way that the government, HUD specifically works, each of the program offices report up through their respective assistant secretary or their principal deputy assistant secretary. But what HUD FPM does is provide a connection, a liaison, and a linkage, particularly where there are concerns that are raised to us. We can escalate them and share them with the program office to let them know, hey, we're seeing this concern and this issue. We do that quite a bit with, I'll use multifamily properties as an example, where tenants or residents are experiencing concerns that they don't feel are quite right, and they've raised the issues with the local contracting agency who's responsible to sort of track and manage that. And we may find situations where it comes to us, and we'll work closely with the Office of Housing, the Office of Multifamily Housing, to really think through what's going on at that property, when's the last time they were reviewed. So we don't serve a formal role in oversight or compliance. I want to be clear, that is strictly within the purview and the authority of the leadership of the respective program offices. But I think it's useful for folks to know that we are partners with them and with community to sort of make connections that aren't necessarily obviously apparent, and maybe that escalation or those conversations are worthwhile and necessary, even if just to communicate with communities about what HUD is doing, and where there are gaps where HUD is not taking some action, where we can actually follow up and execute on that as well.
Wonderful. And Claire, anything else? One last question. Do we have time?
Yeah, I think we do. Well, so I've got I think you can probably answer this question. How do I know what region I'm in? How do I know?
So the good news is you don't need to know about the region, because we've organized that QR code by state. And I would say to you, I saw one question, if you're not getting responses, I'm happy for you to reach out to our headquarters team. So I want you to know that it is absolutely critical. Like, we are measuring and evaluating the total number of calls, and we are beginning to, I'll be honest with you, mature that process to determine, when folks are calling us, are they getting the assistance that they need? We may not always have the resources, right? HUD doesn't deliver support. We make referrals in most cases to as an intermediary to the programs that actually can provide support. But getting a accurate response, a timely response, and to be treated with care, compassion, and respect is absolutely critical to your experience as customers. And so I highly encourage you, as a consequence of this, to reach out, and you can even let them know Michelle sent you. I'll say that. Because I am communicating widely and broadly that this is an expectation that if we don't pick up the phone, if we don't return the calls, if we're not getting accurate information, then we have failed in our obligation to meeting all of our customers. And that is not something that is acceptable to any one of us, and is something that we are working hard to ensure we get right.
Yeah, thank you so much, Michelle. And there's no question that customer service and using focused design to deliver high quality services is a priority of our HUD secretary and, of course, this administration. I want to thank you for joining us to kick off our third day of our community conference. To our entire audience as well, thank you for joining us. We are going to have a great day of sessions ahead, and I hope that you will join us for each of the sessions. Keep in mind that when we have concurrent sessions, we are recording them, and you'll be able to view them later. I know a lot of people were troubled that they had to make choices yesterday because of the great content, but thank you. We're going to have a great day, and I look forward to speaking with you later. Claire, I'll turn it back to you.
Excellent. Thank you, David. Thank you, Michelle. So as David just mentioned here, we have our schedule for the rest of the day. We have an exciting session, I think, next on expanding your agency's capacity to do capacity through doing fee for service. So that's lender funded housing counseling and education. And then, yes, we have concurrent sessions. So we're going to be talking with Housing Action Illinois about their updated guide to choosing a CMS. So if you are in the market for a new one, or you're just interested to know more, be sure to join for that. They're going to do a demonstration. And then concurrent with that, we're going to be celebrating all of you. So we'll hear from some HUD certified counselors who have been working in the field for a long time. I think that's going to be a fun session. And then your closing 3 to 4, you'll hear from Office of Housing Counseling Leadership. So we'll have the directors of each of the offices within the Office of Housing Counseling. And so that's a great opportunity to hear straight from the folks who are leading that office. I will just let you know you can connect on 6 Connects, still open. The platform will be open, and we've got a couple discussion boards, including David's Corner is still open. And then, of course, you can email HUD and visit the conference webpage. So thanks again for joining, and we're looking forward to the rest of the day.